The Criminal Cases Review Commission is overworked, underfunded, and is governed and run currently in such a manner that it had been failing victims of miscarriages of justice for years. 19th of February 2025, Romford Recorder reports MPs on Justice Committee to investigate CCRC caseloads. And the article goes on to show that basically the CCRC is currently overworked, underfunded, badly managed, and has been failing victims for years. 21st of February 2025, Inside Time reports government considering ways of supporting victims of miscarriages of justice. Hi, my name by birth, Alex William Smith. I'm better known as Mind Magician Alex Leroy, or comedy hypnotist and celebrity hypnotherapist Jonathan Royal of circusofthemind.net, and I've got a few questions to ask you. I'd really love to hear your answers. Share this far and wide on social media with your answers of why you think in relation to victims like myself of Rupert Murdoch's fake Sheikh, Mazher Mahmood, a former journalist for the now shut down News of the World and The Sun on Sunday, who is most famous for basically ending up in jail for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice after the 2014 court case against Talisa Kontos-Davlos and the allegation she faced of being involved in the supply of drugs collapsed, exposing him as a liar. I've got some questions and things for you to consider. Be interested in your thoughts. In 2006, the Guardian newspaper reported fake Sheikh accused after terror plot acquittals on the 26th of July 2006. 3 men were cleared in the Red Mercury bomb case. You can find these links in the comments, the link located above or below this video to see the articles. But ultimately, this case, the 3 people were cleared and it was shown to be complete and utter nonsense. And Stephen Solly QC, defending Mr. Martins, one of the accused, said Mr. Mahmood had misled the police, the Crown Prosecution Service and the courts. He said there was a huge danger of accepting Mr. Mahmood's word in respect of any matter whatsoever. So, in 2006, that's when that happened, which raises the question, why, in 2006, did the Crown Prosecution Service not contact me and other victims of the fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood to inform us that that case had collapsed and the circumstances in which it's collapsed and the fact that this shone a light on potential dishonesty of Mazher Mahmood that therefore may make us victims want to reconsider or consider, going to the CCRC and appealing unsafe convictions, or possibly unsafe convictions as they may have looked at it. We were never contacted. It was never brought up. Further questions follow. In the same Guardian article of 26th of July 2006, they list some of the hits and misses, as they refer to it, of Mahmood's. And amongst there, they mention the fact that in October 1999, Rhodri Giggs, brother of footballer Ryan, is arrested after being accused of supplying cocaine to Mahmood. He loses his job but is later found not guilty after the prosecution says it cannot rely on taped conversations between him and Mahmood. November 2002, Mahmood exposes a plot to kidnap David and Victoria Beckham's children. 5 men are charged, but the case is thrown out after it is ruled that the paper's informant was an unreliable witness. When Mahmood's evidence was again called into question and led to the Crown Prosecution Service dropping their case against Rhodri Giggs, surely, as previous victims such as myself, John Alford and various other people had made the assertion that we believe tapes have been edited to give a false version of events, surely the Crown Prosecution Service should have contacted us then and disclosed the fact that that case had collapsed due to Mahmood's evidence being in question, because that would surely give us reason to question our unsafe convictions, given that we asserted that he'd messed with evidence in our cases. After the collapse of the Tilisa Kontos-Davlos drugs trial, where the judge exposed Mahmood and his driver Alan Smith as liars, and ultimately they ended up later getting charged, convicted and unanimously convicted and then sentenced for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Bellingcat on November the 12th, 2014 ran this article. Mazher Mahmood claims BBC are responsible. That was in relation to them broadcasting Panorama. But he has collapsed 16 cases since July. These are extraordinary claims for a man who has collapsed 16 criminal cases since July 2014. And in the last 11 years, at least 2 other cases have collapsed, one of them where, ironically, the judge referred the matter to the Attorney General to consider the temptations that money being offered in return for stories concerning celebrities give rise to, as well as a conviction quashed after the defendant had served his sentence because Mahmood had deliberately hid a witness who was deemed too unreliable at the trial to strengthen the prosecution. Yeah, following the collapse of the Tilisa trial, 16 other criminal cases were dropped, including against a bunch of footballers and a DJ and some others, where the key witness, the key to the case was the evidence of the fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood, because the Crown Prosecution Service said they could no longer rely on his evidence to successfully bring a prosecution against anyone. The collapse of the Tilisa Kontos-Davlos trial in 2014 means there is insufficient evidence for a realistic prospect of conviction. The case against 13 footballers investigated over alleged match fixing has been dropped after prosecutors, i.e. the Crown Prosecution Service, considered the reliability of evidence from fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood to no longer be reliable. That was reported on the 15th of January 2015 by Sky News. Quoting from that article, it says a CPS, Crown Prosecution Service spokeswoman, said a file was passed to the CPS in July 2014, which is the same month that the Tilisa trial collapsed and Mahmood exposed as a liar, from the National Crime Agency in relation to alleged football match fixing in 2013. The case involved evidence in relation to 13 suspects. The reliability of the evidence of one alleged witness, i.e. Mazher Mahmood, in particular had to be very carefully considered in light of recent events in the trial of Regina versus Kontos-Davlos and Coombs. This was not the only evidence that was considered, and when all the evidence submitted by investigators was carefully reviewed, in accordance with the Code for Crown Prosecutors, it was decided that there was insufficient evidence to provide a realistic prospect of conviction. Bottom line, key witness, Mazher Mahmood, can't be trusted any further, so they won't prosecute and the cases were dropped. 4th of December 2014. Guardian article. Mazher Mahmood's Crown Prosecution Service to investigate 25 cases. Fake Sheikh cases to be re-examined in wake of judge's decision to halt Tilisa Kontos-Davlos trial over concerns about evidence. Basically, it says the CPS has announced it took steps after the collapse of the Tilisa trial to identify current and past cases involving Mr. Mahmood as a prosecution witness. A spokesman said, we made it our immediate priority to carefully look into live prosecutions in accordance with the Code for Crown Prosecutors and any past cases which involved a defendant still in custody. It identified 3 live cases and concluded there was no longer a realistic prospect of a conviction, so the prosecutions were dropped. The next stage involved past cases that resulted in convictions based on evidence provided by Mr. Mahmood. Having identified 25 such cases, the CPS says it will be contacting representatives of the defendants or the defendants themselves in order to provide them with a disclosure pack so that they can supply details they may consider undermines the conviction. CPS spokesperson said, when making a charging decision, each case and the evidence provided to us is assessed on its own merit and a decision is made in accordance with the Code for Crown Prosecutors. If After the conclusion of proceedings, new material comes to light that may cast doubt upon the safety of a conviction. We have a duty to consider disclosure. By providing disclosure packs to the defence, consideration can be given as to whether or not this material might cast doubt upon the safety of any convictions. The CPS will provide information to defence representatives in order to allow them to consider whether there is any basis for their client's case to be referred to the Court of Appeal or to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Disclosure packs have also been given to the Law Society, CCRC, and relevant regulatory bodies who have had cases involving Mr. Mahmood. The CBS spokesman said, "The safety of convictions is of paramount importance to the CPS. Therefore, if defence representatives have not been contacted by the end of December and provided with a disclosure pack, then we would invite them to contact their local CPS office in order to provide their details and to request a pack. Care should be taken when reporting matters relating to Mr. Mahmood to ensure it does not affect the fairness of future proceedings as the police investigation in it remains ongoing." So there's the CPS itself saying that if something comes to light during another case that may cast doubt on the safety of someone who's been previously convicted's conviction because the same key witness is involved, that they have a duty of care, an obligation to disclose, well, consider disclosure, but you would say if they find something that they should disclose it to those victims. And yet myself, a Mazher Mahmood victim, and other Mazher Mahmood victims I know, were never and have never had disclosed to them directly by the police or Crown Prosecution Service all of the details relevant to the collapse cases that have been mentioned so far here, and the fact that in all cases Mahmood's dishonesty was brought into question, something that we've always asserted. So surely, if those cases have then been dropped because he can no longer be relied upon as a witness of truth, surely that means that had we been informed of that or knew of such things before our cases went to court, that they would never have made it to court, or we could have all continued to plead not guilty and shown such evidence to a jury, which would have more than likely, you can logically see, led to us being found not guilty as we should have been, because Mahmood has a track record of perjurious lies, fabricating evidence and a whole bunch of other things as well. As reported by the BBC on the 4th of December 2014, as well as the footballers I mentioned earlier, in September 2014, several cases involving evidence from Mr. Mahmood were halted. The CPS offered no evidence against Mr. Majid Ridda and pharmacist Mutasser Ghulam Hussain, who were accused of illegally supplying an abortion drug, and Leo Starino Anderson and co-defendant Ashley Gordon also had drug charges dismissed. Dismissed because they could no longer rely on the evidence of Mazher Mahmood after the collapse of the Talisa trial. But yeah, in the disclosure packs that I was sent and other Mahmood victims that the CPS made a big hoo-ha about, all there was a little bit of transcript of what was said in the Talisa trial involving the judge discovering that Mahmood and his driver Alan Smith had lied and conspired to pervert the course of justice. There was no mention of the collapse trials. There was zero mention of collapse trials in '99 of Roderick Giggs. No information given on that. And no information given on things that I'm about to show you right now. For the record, in 2014, after the collapse of the Talisa trial, I did start preparations to go to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, based on the fact that Mahmood had been exposed as a liar. And ultimately, I did get a submission into them. And it was about 2016 when they finally, or may have even been later than that, but it's all on my website, circusofthemind.net anyway. But the point is they came back and they rejected my application. And then I discovered that I could apply to the single judge direct at the Court of Appeal, because I'd never made an appeal at the time. And I did, and the single judge just fobbed me off and said no. So I later went to the three judges at the Court of Appeal, as explained on circusofthemind.net, and they did not give me permission to appeal out of time, which meant I couldn't present my evidence in court. Since that occurred in January 2022, I submitted a civil case against News Group newspapers on the 30th of September 2022, which was settled out of court towards the end of 2024, with News Group newspapers paying me substantial damages and issuing me a private letter of apology for their actions at the News of the World in 1998, namely in relation to Mazher Mahmood and the things they did that were unlawful, unethical, and I would assert illegal, as you'll see on circusofthemind.net. In any event, I, in 2022, also went to the Criminal Cases Review Commission again, and ultimately, when I got my reply, they just apparently lazily copied what the three judges had said, and basically said I didn't have a realistic prospect of my convictions being found unsafe if they went back to the Court of Appeal, which I think you'll already realise at this point is nonsense, given that the key witness was Mazher Mahmood, who's had cases collapse over the years, and the police and Crown Prosecution Service have already demonstrated failed to disclose. They even failed to take the opportunity in 2014, when issuing the Talisa packs, to disclose the other information that I've mentioned in this video. But it gets worse. In a 2nd of May 2024 article by Press Gang on Substack by the journalist Paddy French, exclusive. The Murdoch newspaper empire is ignoring calls to release documents which show that Mazher, fake Sheikh Mahmood, was corrupt 2 decades before he was finally brought to book. After Mahmood was caught lying during the Talisa Kontostovolos trial in 2014, the Crown Prosecution Service dropped 3 pending cases based on his evidence. The CPS also carried out a review on 25 of his earlier convictions. These included the actor John Alford and the entertainer Alex Smith, aka Jonathan Royal Hypnotist. That's yours truly, me. Alford was jailed for 9 months in 1999 after a Mahmood cocaine sting. In the same year, Smith was sentenced to 6 months. Actually, it was 2 6-month sentences to run concurrently after a sting involving counterfeit coins. Both insist they were framed. None of the convictions was quashed. Alford and Smith both failed to persuade the Court of Appeal to overturn their convictions. But here's the thing. The latest revelations show that police, prosecutors, the judiciary and the News of the World all knew that Mahmood was committing perjury as early as 1994. Yes, indeed. In 2021, lawyers in the phone hacking litigation made an extraordinary discovery. In an archive handed over by News UK, parent company of the News of the World, they found a series of dramatic documents about a crisis at the paper in 1994. It followed an investigation by Mazher Mahmood into a drugs and ticket racket at Wimbledon. Piers Morgan was editor, Rebecca Brooks was reporter. The documents, we'll call them the Wimbledon papers in this article, are not in the public domain, but a summary of their contents was included in a statement read out in court last year. The article goes on to give details, as does my perfected grounds of appeal from 2022 and 2019, which can be seen on circusofthemind.net, about the fact that documents exist and were disclosed of communications between the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service communicating with each other after the collapse of a 1994 court trial where Mahmood was the main witness. His evidence was brought into question, and ultimately the prosecution decided they could no longer proceed and the case was dropped. They then communicated with each other and they stated, the police to the CPS to the police, that Mahmood's evidence could not and should not ever be relied upon again. And yet they did. And here's the other thing, yeah, you've guessed it. Police and CPS never disclosed this to me or any other Mahmood victim when we were arrested, when we were charged, or before we went to court. And yet they had a legal, moral and ethical obligation to disclose to us anything which could affect the safety of any convictions obtained, or that could be useful to us as evidence in proving our innocence. And we, all of us, most of us at least, asserted the fact that we believed Mahmood had edited evidence, fabricated evidence, lied and done a whole bunch of other things. And yet they never thought to tell us about the collapsed 1994 case. How strange. In another investigation done by Press Gang and published by Paddy French, the journalist, on a Substack on May the 30th, 2024, with the heading Stitched Up, Press Gang has uncovered 2 new cases of collapsed trials involving the News of the World reporter Mazher fake Sheikh Mahmood. These cases, buried for decades, show that Mahmood's reckless behaviour could have been stopped long before he was finally brought to book by being jailed in 2016 after the collapse of the Talisa trial in 2014. A 1998 Bradford Crown Court trial collapsed after Mahmood and an informant were accused of setting up a schoolboy in a drug sting. And in 2001, the trial of a young woman accused of passport-related offences was stopped when the prosecution admitted she was a whistleblower, not a villain. You can see that article by Paddy French by looking in the comments and replies of the article on Facebook that you'll find located at the link above or below this video. The thing is this. A case collapsed in 1998. The article about me that was fabricated by Mahmood appeared in early 1998, and I did not go to court until March 1999, as explained on circusofthemind.net. I pled not guilty until the first day of trial. I only changed my plea because I was advised that Mahmood was protected by journalistic licence and he would not have to reveal his sources, which meant I couldn't prove that my former publicist betrayed my trust, manipulated me, and also done unlawful and arguably illegal things to make the apparent story apparently take place, when in actual fact he was on the payroll of Mazher Mahmood. All of that has now been proven, as I'll come to later in this video. But in any event, at the time, I was unable to prove that. So I changed my plea to guilty with mitigating circumstances, as explained on circusofthemind.net. I didn't need to. If the police and Crown Prosecution Service had abided by their ethical, moral, and, I gather, legal obligations to disclose to me anything that would be relevant and could affect my case, and surely a 1998 case collapsing because Mahmood's honesty is brought into question should be deemed as relevant. And it happened before I went to court. But there again, so did the 1994 case, where the police and CPS said his evidence could not and should not ever be relied upon. But again, they never disclosed those things to me. And then after my, we now know, UNSAFE convictions in early 1999, did they come afterwards and contact me after the collapse of the Roderick Giggs case, where Mahmood was sure to be lying and mess with recordings? No. Did they heck? Did they come to me after the details of this next case collapse? In that same stitched up article, Paddy French not only mentions the 98 Bradford case, which was never disclosed to me or other victims, but also a 2001 trial, which collapsed. It collapsed when it was noticed that in covert audio recordings made of the sting that Mahmood did on this lady in the passport alleged scandal, that he was actually heard to say, "I am going to stitch her up." And then further evidence came out that it was all a complete setup. There was no truth in the matter. She was a whistleblower, not a criminal. And these are just the cases we know about now. Some of these only came to light in the past sort of 12 months. But the police and CPS knew about these at the time of collapse. So why did they not contact previous victims like myself, John Elford, Herbie Hides, the Earl of Hardwicke, Stephen Thwaites, and his business partner at the time, Earl of Hardwicke's Joseph York, and his business partner, Stephen Thwaites, and a whole bunch of other people who'd been victim to Mahmood's sting stories, where they were manipulated, lied about, and framed with false evidence, which is why numerous cases have collapsed, as I've illustrated in this video, and yet the police and CPS have never disclosed that to us. Either before our cases went to court, where the things were already known about, such as far back as 1994, or since. And they had the perfect opportunity in 2014, when they contacted us with the disclosure packs about the collapse of the Talisa trial, to tell us about the collapse of the 1994 trial, the 98 trial, the 99 trial, the 2001 trial, and anything else that they know about, because I'm sure there's other things they know about that we've not been told about and not found out yet. it stinks to the high heavens that in 1994 the police and CPS said to each other, Mahmood's evidence could not and should not be relied upon any further, and yet they continued to do so. That alone should be enough for all our fake Sheikh victims' convictions to be referred to the Court of Appeal when, based on all the cases being dropped after the Talisa trial collapsed, where Mahmood's evidence was the key thing, and the CPS said they could no longer rely on him, maybe they should have listened to what they said back in 1994 and it would never have got to that point. But in any event, based on that, that means that when we are, and I'll say when to be positive, when we are referred back to the Court of Appeal, the evidence we now have of the disclosure failures alone, which prove Mahmood's dishonesty long term, that alone should be enough to have our convictions overturned. But when you add into that the fact that, as I made loads of assertions in my case, Alex Smith versus Newsgroup newspapers, that was filed on the 30th of September 2022. You can see my claimant-specific particulars of claim at circusofthemind.net, and you're looking at and you'll see that I assert that Mahmood drugged me, that he paid people to manipulate me behind the scenes, he was all elements of the supply chain, he tampered with evidence, he did not disclose things to the police, things that if he'd disclosed, such as the fact that he hacked my phones and used unlawful information gathering, if that had been disclosed, my case would never have got to court. Again, more reasons why my convictions are unsafe. And in the course of disclosure in my civil case, evidence came out that proved there were 13 receipts for payments to a multiple number of people, not just before the story, but when the story had been published and months later, which appear to suggest that surveillance was going on in order to try and manipulate me to change my plea to guilty, because it now turns out obviously they were scared that if it went to court and I was to expose their dishonesty, that could have been bad for them, as explained at circusofthemind.net. Well, in late 2024, Rupert Murdoch's Newsgroup newspapers paid me a large sum of money, a Part 36 offer, which meant I was effectively silenced from being able to get judicial rulings on my allegations. But they've also given me a private letter of apology, giving me. It's not actually been given to me yet, but they've given me the draft of it. Anyway, the point being that why would you apologise when nothing had been done wrong? In fact, the apology is apologising for unlawful behaviour by journalists employed by the News of the World, which surely therefore means that that wasn't disclosed to the police or CPS by Mahmood, the fact that they'd done this unlawful information gathering, surveillance and other things, and had that been known, my case would never have gone to court, meaning my convictions are unsafe. But surely they're also unsafe when you consider that I, like many other victims, assert that we were drugged without our knowledge or consent, as you'll see in this next video footage. I now have evidence of that as well. You can check out more at circusofthemind.net, but here's some things that seem to back up the assertion I'd made that I believe my drinks were spiked, more than likely drugged with a GHB style date rape drug to make me more compliant, and that this is something that, having done some research over the past few years, I've discovered was mentioned by loads of people. Now, you can see my grounds of appeal on circusofthemind.net, and also on circusofthemind.net you'll see the video regarding non-disclosure by the CPS and the video regarding the errors with paperwork, the chain of evidence being ridiculous, and the full story behind what went on and what not. Anyway, you'll see my grounds of appeal. One of the things is that, in particular, it is said that Mahmood surreptitiously administered date rape type drugs to his targets in order to inebriate them and render them more susceptible to manipulation. There's other things on there that he messed with evidence, edited it, loads of other things, but we're just talking about the drugs here. And as you can see, there's various other things. Clearly pointing out here that on the 2nd of April, the 3 £1 coins I gave were genuine from my pocket, and the ones on the 9th of April were from a place told to get them from by Mahmood's associates, and they provided the money. You can see that on screen at circusofthemind.net. So, here, as you can see, is the witness statement of Stephen Grayson, 17th of May 2021, in support of my appeal. You can see Stephen Grayson talking about his time working with Mahmood in the BBC Panorama documentary Fake Sheikh Exposed, which again can be seen on circusofthemind.net. This is the bit to look at. I'll leave you to read it. Spiking of drinks. I've been asked what I know about the spiking of drinks. Mazher boasted that he knew a pharmacist who could provide him with a GHB-like drug and that he used it in his social life to seduce, if that is the right word, young women. On occasion, I acted as Mazher's butler, and I noticed how quickly the girls became disinhibited even after a small amount of drinks. I recall one incident when I strongly suspected that a spiked drink was used in a News of the World sting. This incident took place in a suite at the Savoy. There was a man and a woman. The man was turning over the woman, i.e. he was working with us and betraying the woman, stitching her up. I recall it was something to do with a plan to rob a betting shop, but I am not certain. The woman was not being very forthcoming, and Mazher offered her a drink. Unusually, instead of getting a flunky to serve the drinks, he made it himself and brought it over. Within 15 to 20 minutes, the woman said that she was feeling woozy but was much more talkative. She was later sick in the bathroom. It seemed to me at the time that he had spiked her drink. Someone who worked with Mahmood closely at one time, now giving me a statement to say that he'd witnessed it occur and that Mahmood bragged about it as well. As you can see, Talisa was left hyper-drunk after a meeting with undercover reporter, the Fake Sheikh. This is the case that collapsed in 2014. Obviously, the Fake Sheikh denied spiking Talisa's drink, but her barrister, Jeremy Dine, did make that assertion in court. As you can see, the reporter denied spiking her drinks, but isn't it odd? As you can see, Jeremy Dine said, "You and Nish spiked her drink, didn't you?" The witness firmly responded, "That being Mahmood, that's absolutely outrageous." Mr. Dine continued to spike her drinks to get her to incriminate herself. Former X Factor judge Talisa broke her code out. You can see down here it says, when you look, that Southwark Crown Court heard that Mahmood spiked her drink. That was in 2014, the case that collapsed and ultimately led to Mahmood being jailed for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. This is, you can find the links to this on circusofthemind.net, and everything you're seeing is on circusofthemind.net, and there's a bit that says, see my past 24 years of research. You go and click on that link and you will get the links to these various newspaper articles and web archives and stuff. And this one, regarding a Dr. Manohar Ranwani, took place in January 1998, okay, the sting, which was before my alleged offence in March 98. And in this, he said he must have been given a drug as he could not recall any discussions. This is a doctor saying he believes he was drugged and he couldn't. This is before my case. So if the drugs were being used as the assertion was made then, it makes sense that they could have also been used on my case, which is backed up by the fact that, you know, he bragged about being able to get such to Steve Grayson. Steve Grayson witnessed such occurring on at least one occasion. You can see this article as I'm said, but I think I must have taken something that blocked my memory. I can only come to the conclusion that I was given some drugs, and this is a doctor saying that. And you can look at that again, as I say, on circusofthemind.net. Also, the Newcastle directors Hall and Shepherd suspected that the team spiked their drinks in order to elicit their indiscretions. An article there, Sunday 9th of May 99. You can find the links on circusofthemind.net by following the link to my 24 years of research to that article where they say they believe that their drinks, when that failed, they suspect Mahmood or else a member of his team spiked their drinks in order to elicit their indiscretions. It's in that article. John Higgins, who rarely drinks, was suspicious of drinks provided to him in 2010. And in the article by Roy Greenslade, you can see that two directors of Newcastle United Club were back to them again, believe the drinks were spiked, and John Higgins, who rarely drinks, was suspicious of drinks provided to him in 2010. The Earl of Ardwick believed his champagne was spiked with a date rape type drug, and that was mentioned, as you can see there, applied with champagne, possibly spiked with the date rape drug Rofinol or similar. Mr. Jones said the paper had been accused in the past of drugging the drinks of others it had targeted, and added there were a number of indications suggesting the same tactic had been used on this occasion. Lawrence Delagio News of the World denied spiking his drinks, as they would do, but that was May 1999 when they denied that. It happened before then, so this is all around, not long after my case, and we've had one that predates my case, so, it seems to point to that it was his modus operandi, and that would have also have taken place with me. And as you can see, he believes that his drinks were drugged. John Alford. That article. All of these can be accessed by going to circusofthemind.net and clicking on where it says see my past 24 years of research. And mine was, it says here in almost every detail, the subterfuge involved mirrors what happened in the Talisa trial case. Same with mine, so it does, as you'll see when you look at all the evidence at circusofthemind.net. As you can see, drinks. Like so many other of Mahmood's victims believed they were spiked. He was asked if he could. Again, I've not yet had the chance to fully, have the evidence, including the statement from Steve Grace, who used to work with Mahmood, fully heard at the Royal Courts of Justice, because unfortunately in January 2022 they did not give me permission to appeal out of time or to vary my grounds. Hopefully now that it's gone to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, as you can see at circusofthemind.net, they will send it back, and then these things can be looked at. The fact that I was drugged, the fact that we've now got receipt proving that unlawful information gathering, phone hacking took place. In fact, I've got statements galore showing his modus operandi of editing tapes, manipulating evidence, lying, entrapment, intimidation and threats behind the scenes, and all the other things that happened to me as detailed at circusofthemind.net. So, massive long-term disclosure failures by the Police and Crown Prosecution Service before, during and after my wrongful conviction and other people's wrongful convictions. Turning a blind eye to the fact that Mahmood drugged us, and there's evidence there of that. And, at the link above or below this video, you will see the following. At the link above or below this video is a video which I would urge you to watch, with television clips and other evidence, and the following information. I posted this on the 20th of February 2025, and it states, massive miscarriages of justice since at least 1994. Disclosure failures by police and CPS since at least 1994. The corruption and cover-ups continue to be exposed. 1 year ago today, I posted this video as shown below on Facebook. There's a link. Have a look at it. Since then, more evidence of cover-ups, corruption and incompetence by the Police and Crown Prosecution Service has come to light, as explained in the next two videos. And there are two videos, one titled Big Questions for Police and Crown Prosecution Service, Fake Sheikh, Mazher Mahmood, Disclosure Failure, and one entitled Disclosure Failures by Police and Crown Prosecution Service on Murdoch's Fake Sheikh, Mazher Mahmood. And indeed, since I posted the video below last year, my legal case against Rupert Murdoch's news group newspapers, NGN, came to an end in December 2024, as did Duke of Sussex Prince Harry's case in January 25, as explained in this video. Then there's a link to details about my legal case, a link to my claimant-specific particulars of claim and the things I asserted Murdoch had done. And my case, as did Prince Harry's, for whom I was also a witness, also relied on the evidence in this document, the re-amended generic particulars of concealment and destruction. There's a link to it. It's in the public domain. Ultimately, this led them, NGN, to making me a Part 36 offer in late 2024 to effectively silence me. The next link explains what a Part 36 offer is and how NGN have weaponised them against victims like me to the tune of over 1.5 billion, yes, billion pounds, 1.5 billion pounds to date. And a link explaining what a Part 36 offer is and why I had no choice but to accept it, even though I wanted to go to court to get judicial findings on my assertions that you'll find on circusofthemind.net. Then the next video gives details of the latest evidence I've managed to acquire, proving my convictions are unsafe. Then, as it says below, is an interesting and eye-opening video about Rupert Murdoch's disgraced journalist, the fake Sheikh, where you will see me, magician Alex William Smith, aka hypnotist Jonathan Royle, actor John Alford, boxer Herbie Hydes, model and actress Emma Morgan, and some other of Mahmood's victims. But in reality, it does not even scrape the surface of the real truth. To see detailed, undeniable evidence of the much bigger picture, you need to check out everything I have posted at the next link. Hypnotist stung by fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood vows to clear his name. Go to circusofthemind.net. Some bullet points of the things that I both assert and have evidence of now are that Mahmood and his team drug people in the course of their stings. Mahmood and his team purposely got people drunk so they became easier to manipulate. They regularly edited recordings and tampered with evidence. Majority of the stories had zero basis in fact and zero real public interest factor, and so arguably were and are illegal entrapment and illegal secret recording, etc. Intimidation, threats and manipulation techniques of the highest order were used behind the scenes by Mahmood and his team to engineer alleged crimes that would never otherwise have occurred. Unlawful information gathering, phone hacking and other illegal and unlawful methods were routinely used to manipulate and control innocent people and interfere with their legal cases. Mahmood and his team were most often all parts of the supply chain of any contraband, and indeed judges over the years questioned why he had not been charged for his unlawful and arguably illegal actions. Finally, jailed for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, evidence shows that Mahmood committed perjury during the Leveson inquiry and also on many other occasions in court cases. Indeed, documents exist proving beyond any reasonable doubt that both the Metropolitan Police and also the Crown Prosecution Service knew and agreed with each other as far back as at least 1994 that Mahmood could not and indeed should not ever be relied upon as a witness of truth in any further court cases, and yet it was not until the collapse of Talisa's trial in 2014, some 20 years later, that they stopped relying on his evidence. Despite the above, to this day, and I make this video on the 23rd of February 2025, despite the above, to this day, neither the police or Crown Prosecution Service have ever disclosed these very real facts to me or any other Mahmood victims. Indeed, a 1998 and 99 court case and a 2001 one, as mentioned before, also collapsed because suddenly the CPS decided they could no longer rely on the fake Sheikh's evidence. But again, this has never been disclosed to me or any other victims from police or CPS sources. And of course, as you also know from this video, cases collapsed in 2014 because they can no longer rely on his evidence. Ultimately, any convictions are unsafe as they were obtained through lies, deception, deceit and fabrication of false or manipulated evidence to obtain a malicious prosecution. And there's way more evidence as well, as can be seen at the links that are then later posted on that article on Facebook. You can see at the link above or below this video. So I can't think of any other way to describe it other than there are massive miscarriages of justice. There are multiple people with unsafe convictions due to the perjurous lies, fabrication of evidence, being drugged by Mahmood and his team, then being also areas of the supply team, and a whole bunch of other things as well. Heck, in their defence against my claim against Newsgroup newspapers, Newsgroup came back and said that Mazher Mahmood categorically denied giving me the money up front or telling me via his team where to go and pick up the alleged fake coins from. And yet, when the process of disclosure took place and I got hold of all the covert videos and audios, the videos proved that he gave me the money up front to go and collect the coins that I'd been told where to acquire during phone calls and meetings with other members of his associates that were being paid money to purposely stitch me up and create a malicious prosecution. And the evidence shows that he kept hold of these alleged counterfeit coins. He kept hold of 3 of them for 10 days after receiving them, although they were genuine anyway. And he kept hold of the alleged 1,000 of them for a full week after the story appeared, actually 10 days after he was given them, and that in itself is a criminal offence. He had no legal justification of keeping hold of them. Should have given them to the police the very moment he got them, or at the very least he could have argued the day the article was published, but he didn't until a full 7 days later. So there is no proof of the chain of evidence either. And indeed, when I asked the Royal Mint if they had records from that time period, they confirmed that they do keep records from 1998. But as I mentioned on circusofthemind.net in the various legal documents there, they confirmed they have nothing from the News of the World related to my name, my stage names, Mazher Mahmood, or anything to do with that article, suggesting that coins were never sent to them for forensic testing, and therefore the coins were never proven to be anything fake anyway. Although it's now also come to light, yes, get this. The News of the World published an article on the 30th of April 1995 about fake pound coins. Money bagged, we nab gang making a mint from fake pound coins. This individual here apparently is called Alan Smith. The 1995 article by Mazher Mahmood makes mention that the sidekick Alan Smith, and then later on Alan Smith's mentioned again. The person named Alan Smith in this article, as far as I can tell, unless someone else can prove otherwise, which I doubt very much, grew up to be pictured in 2014 outside the Old Bailey alongside Mazher Mahmood hiding his identity. That's his driver, Alan Smith. Yeah, I'm asserting that I believe that was a set-up story, and if there was any counterfeit currency involved, and it wasn't just a completely stunted, made-up fake story, that Alan Smith was involved with it, and it shows that Mahmood, prior to the stitch-up of me in 1998, knew how to source counterfeit currency. And at a later time, I discovered in this article Mazher Mahmood's silence from Met, CPS and Attorney General as Lord Goldsmith calls for re-examination, whilst Beckham kidnapped lawyer calls for an inquiry, that was published on 20th of November 2014. There was mention of Operation Canopus. I went searching, and in that there was somebody interviewed who makes the assertion that Mazher Mahmood, he made allegations that Mahmood had dealt with counterfeit currency for his own gain and profit, which I think is an interesting thing to note as well. In the Bellingcat article, which again you can see in the comments of the post at the link above or below this video, a guy called Florent Gashi refers to a totally innocent man who got his conviction eventually quashed by the CCRC. That was an Albanian security guard, Besnik Qama, sorry, don't know how to say it, whose conviction got quashed in 2010 as a direct result of Gashi's statement. Okay, this same statement also triggered Scotland Yard's Operation Canopus, an investigation into Mazher Mahmood. He was interviewed under caution, and Mahmood told the police he even had bent coppers that are witnesses who are informers. It should be pointed out that Mahmood himself was a registered police informer. Why he never told the police about bent coppers, or why the police failed to open an inquiry immediately after being told this, is still unclear. In this article, this bit's of interest, 5 years later, despite Scotland Yard's earlier claim Gashi not being a convincing witness and therefore insufficient evidence they claimed against Mahmood, QAMA appealed to overturn his conviction with the Criminal Cases Review Commission, an independent public body using the very same Gashi evidence Scotland Yard had dismissed. The CCRC referred QAMA's case back to Southwark Crown Court pursuant to Section 14(4)A of the Criminal Appeal Act 1995 on the following basis: that there is a real possibility that in light of fresh evidence, the circumstances that Mr. Karma came to commit these offences and the role of Mr. Gashi, the journalist's source in those offences, and or 2, material non-disclosure prior to interview and the entering of a plea by the prosecution of matters affecting the credibility of the key prosecution, the journalist Mazher Mahmood, the Crown Court will set aside the pleas of guilty and stay any further proceedings against Mr. Karma as an abuse of process. As can be seen on circusofthemind.net, in my grounds of appeal that the 3 judges were to consider in January 2022, where ultimately they refused to give me permission to appeal out of time, I did raise matters along that line. However, since then, since them turning me down, as you see on circusofthemind.net, and since the CCRC lazily copying what the 3 judges had said, and thus not referring me back to the Court of Appeal, since then, News Group newspapers have apologised to me for unlawful activities by journalists employed by the News of the World in the 1998 article. Plus all the evidence I've mentioned in here has come to light, much of which is fresh evidence because I've only found it out in the past 12 to 18 months. Plus I've got tons of evidence, such as the videos and audios I've got in disclosure and documents, that prove everything I've ever asserted at circusofthemind.net is true. So therefore my convictions are unsafe, as are many other people's, because of his perjurious lies and illegal and unlawful activities. And when I go back to the Criminal Cases Review Commission this year, 2025, will they just lazily copy and paste things again? Or will they actually pay attention? Especially in light of the fact that, you know, Mahmood's name even comes up in the Daniel Morgan Murder Inquiry report, which is the most investigated murder in British history. Okay, and it's going to be one of the storylines in the forthcoming ITV 7-part serial drama, The Hack, about the mobile telephone voicemail interception litigation, the phone hacking, the unlawful information gathering, and a joint thread running with that will be the Daniel Morgan Murder Inquiry. This article in Byline Times on the 23rd of January 2025, Mazher, fake Sheikh Mahmood off the hook in Prince Harry case. The News of the World hired security guards from a Daniel Morgan murder suspect to protect Mahmood in court. The link to that article you can find in the comments and replies of the Facebook post, the link to which is above or below this video, and further raises more questions, as does the article at this link. Press Gang, 2nd of September 2024. New evidence has emerged about Piers Morgan's role in creating Mazher fake Sheikh Mahmood. This is about a story from 1994, which is very eye-opening indeed. Go to the link above or below the video for more on that. But the bottom line is this. The evidence shows that Piers Morgan turned a blind eye to Mazher Mahmood's dishonesty, lies, unethical, unlawful and arguably illegal manners of creating fabricated stories and framing innocent people, as he did to me and to many others over the years. And the police and CPS, as far back as 1994, turned a blind eye, despite the fact they'd already agreed with each other they couldn't really ever rely on the evidence of Mazher Mahmood ever again. The trouble is the Criminal Cases Review Commission are overworked, understaffed, and well, just Google Criminal Cases Review Commission and victims' names like Andrew Melkinson, who was in prison for a rape he did not commit, and a whole bunch of other people. It's all coming out of the woodwork. The CCRC has been being run incorrectly. It's been, many have said, rightly or wrongly, but I'll say possibly rightly, that it's been more of a ground to stop cases getting back to the Court of Appeal rather than what it's supposed to be, which is to help people with unsafe convictions like myself and other fake Sheikh victims to get back to the Court of Appeal. Because let's face it, look at the evidence here alone, the evidence that the link above or below this video and the evidence on circusofthemind.net, and just ask yourself the question, should my case ever have gone to court? Of course not. Cases had collapsed in 94, in 98. I didn't go to trial till 99. They never disclosed those things to me. If they had done, it'd never gone to court. Or if it had, I'd have pled not guilty, and I assert I would have won. Most definitely at no time did Mahmood disclose he drugged me or used unlawful information gathering. And the fact that he used unlawful techniques is no longer in question because Newsgroup newspapers in late 24 have made me a Part 36 offer, a large financial settlement, and are issuing me with an apology for the unlawful techniques used by journalists employed by the News of the World, namely Mazher Mahmood and his team. None of that was disclosed to the police or Crown Prosecution Service, so it was a malicious prosecution and therefore the convictions are unsafe. Not just me, he did this to many other victims as well. Please, we need Leveson Inquiry Part 2 more than ever because, as the great campaigners at Hacked Off and their website explain, we need it because Part 2 was going to look at corruption, lies and cover-ups between the police. The Crown Prosecution Service would probably get dragged into it. And the media and the police and a whole bunch of surrounding issues. And so Brian Leveson said it should also pay attention, in particular, to the activities of Mazher Mahmood. Please share this video far and wide. The police and CPS, and I would argue the CCRC for not referring my case already and other victims' cases, have a lot to answer. Hello there, my name by birth is Alex William Smith, but I'm better known these days as Jonathan Royle, hypnotist and magician. And back in 1998, when I attempted to expose the dishonest and illegal tactics of the News of the World's investigative reporter, the fake Sheikh Mazher Mahmood, I was known as Alex Leroy, hypnotist, back then. In any event, this video is being made in May 2022 just to bring you up to date on the fact that I have just submitted my appeal, resubmitted that is, to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Because in 1998 I set out to expose Mazher Mahmood's dishonest and illegal techniques, fully explained on my page at www.circusofthemind.net. That's www.circusofthemind.net. This backfired as explained at that page, and ultimately in early 1999 led to me being given 2 convictions for delivery of counterfeit coins. Coins that were supplied, the evidence now indicates, by Mahmood's own associates with money provided by him supplying, well, all elements of the supply chain. It becomes clearer at circusofthemind.net, and the video footage that follows, where it's illustrated this was his standard modus operandi, whatever the apparent alleged sting story was. So in 1999 I was jailed, and then there was nothing happened really until 2014, other than I collected evidence galore of further illustration of Mahmood's dishonesty, lies and arguably illegal techniques, and put them on my blog page, circusofthemind.net. I've been campaigning for justice for myself and other victims of Mahmood and press lies, intrusion and illegal activities for years. And then in 2014, the Tulisa Kontostavlos trial collapsed sensationally in London, and Mahmood was exposed as a liar and ultimately charged with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice along with his driver, Alan Smith. Ultimately, they were both jailed at the Old Bailey in London, and as a result of this, the Crown Prosecution Service issued Tulisa packs. By Tulisa packs, I mean disclosure packs about the Tulisa trial. That's all it contained, a little bit of information about that. They had an opportunity then to disclose to us stuff that we now are aware exists, going back to at least 1994, where the police and CPS communicated with newsgroup newspapers as well, somehow having this information on their files that's been come out during the Mittville, the phone hacking trials in the High Court, evidence that the police and CPS said back in 94, after a case collapsed because of it appears and indicates dishonesty by Mahmood, that his word should not be trusted. And yet this was never disclosed to me or any of the other Mahmood victims whose cases went to court after 1994. So there was serious, there wasn't just that, there was many other cases that collapsed and other evidence that came to light that cast out on Mahmood's dishonesty and actions that was never disclosed to me or anyone else. And had it been, my case and loads of others would never have gone to trial. There's been a massive miscarriage of justice for many people here through non-disclosure, I would argue. But also, in 2015, my case, along with many others, was set into action. In my case, because I'd not previously appealed, because I was told I couldn't, I was given incorrect advice. That's the only reason I changed my plea from not guilty to guilty on the first day of trial back in 1999, because I was strongly advised that my plea of entrapment and dishonest techniques being used by Mahmood and manipulation wouldn't work. And that turns out to have been bad advice, because it did work for various other people over the years, and with the evidence I had available at the time, it would, looking back on it now with hindsight, have worked for me. But hey-oh, that's water under the bridge now. In 2015, my case was submitted to the Court of Appeal In 2016, the single judge turned it down based on the very small amount of evidence available at the time, because documents had been lost by all parties during the passage of time. So in 2016, when the single judge turned me down, my lawyer at the time, Siobhan Egan of Lewis Naders Law, immediately sent my case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission before she even informed me that the single judge had turned it down. This then dragged on till 2018, when the CCRC said that they weren't going to refer it to court. I searched around to try and get pro bono legal advice, and ultimately some people were very kind, gave me information, and as a result I found out I could go back to the Court of Appeal because I'd never gone to the full court. And in early 2019, May 2019 to be precise, 3 years practically to the day of this video being released, I submitted my own self-written grounds of appeal to the Courts of Appeal in London. And then along the way, I was fortunate enough, thanks to the Advocate charity, to be given kind assistance by Mr. James Manning of Nexus Chambers in London, an excellent barrister who helped me put together perfected grounds of appeal worded properly in order that I could apply to the Court of Appeal for an extension of time and to vary my grounds to add the new evidence that came to light in 2021. I couldn't have possibly have used this evidence before because I wasn't aware of it, but I now have seen receipts that show unlawful information gathering was used against me, so-called phone hacking and other techniques such as private investigators, and documents that show that we were not disclosed information by the police or CPS that we should have done about Mahmood's lack of reliability as a witness and his dishonesty and such like. I've been given a statement by Steve Grayson, who used to work with Mahmood, confirming that he'd witnessed Mahmood drug people's drinks during the course of stings, and I'm pretty certain that happened to me, as explained on circusofthemind.net, as of loads of other people have stated such happened to them, including to Lisa herself. And ultimately, in January of 2022, I appeared at the Royal Courts of Justice for my hearing, and unfortunately the three judges decided not to give me an extension of time and not to let me vary my grounds of appeal because they weren't giving me an extension of time. So all my new evidence has not yet been heard by the full court, and such, in May 2022, I've submitted a reapplication to the Criminal Cases Review Commission here in England so that they can see that I've now got dozens of statements from people giving information proving that I was subject to the same entrapment and techniques as Mahmood's other victims, and that although I set out thinking and genuinely believing that I was setting everything up so that I could attempt to expose Mahmood's dishonesty and illegal techniques, actually he and his team were always one step ahead of me for the reasons explained on circusofthemind.net, and it was total entrapment from day one. They knew that I knew who he was, so they should have really walked away if they were interested in truth and journalism, but instead they manipulated me, they enticed me, they threatened me behind the scenes, and ultimately they provided the money to be able to get the coins, and they also provided the information of where to get them, and as is illustrated by the video footage that follows, they were all elements of the supply chain, and his modus operandi was the same with me as to Lisa and a whole bunch of his other victims. I've got the statement of being drugged, I've got proof of unlawful information gathering, the fact there's been monumental disclosure, lack of disclosure by the police and CPS on things that they knew about a long time ago. Watch the video footage that follows, it gives you an overview of the story, and then be sure to check out the other evidence galore at circusofthemind.net.
This is a man who doesn't want you to see his face. Mazher Mahmood went to court to stop Panorama showing you pictures like this.
I'll give you a shout. I'm about to go on a job now. I'll give you a shout.
Posing as a fake Sheikh, the News of the World reporter delighted in exposing the secrets of the rich and famous. Dozens of people were sent to jail following his undercover stings.
I never killed anyone, but it feels like I've served a life sentence.
Now Mazher Mahmood stands accused of being a liar.
Mazher Mahmood was Pinocchio on speed. It was so easy for him to fit anybody up.
The King of the Sting destroyed lives, leaving a trail of victims in his wake.
This would never have happened unless they created the situation. They made it happen.
But we can reveal police and prosecutors had evidence for years Mazher Mahmood's word should not have been relied upon.
That's how I knew I had a claim. When I brought the claim, I found to my horror that for 3.5 days, Mazher Mahmood's surveillance team had been following me in 1998 to try and pin something on me. And if anyone knows Mazher Mahmood's history, you can imagine how worrying and what a close escape that must have been for me, given that so many people who were innocent of anything that he accused them of have gone to prison on the basis of his false stories, his false evidence, and his false statements to the police, the prosecution, and to court. And I was that close. And there are plenty of other people out there who were the victims of him, who clearly had their data obtained by him through phone hacking and other unlawful means.
She always denied arranging a drugs deal, and when the trial against pop star Talisa collapsed, she repeated those denials.
I have never dealt drugs and never been involved in taking or dealing cocaine.
Little Mix.
She was a judge on The X Factor when the journalist Mazher Mahmood, also known as the fake Sheikh, targeted her. The undercover sting led to this headline and to the subsequent trial. Now the former Sun on Sunday and News of the World reporter has been charged with conspiring to pervert the course of justice after the Crown Prosecution Service said he's alleged to have misled the court. Today he issued a statement saying, "I'm deeply disappointed that after a totally unjustified delay, the Crown Prosecution Service have today informed me that they have decided to charge me with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. I deny the offence. I will vigorously contest it at court. In the meantime, I have nothing further to say." Mazher Mahmood had great success with his undercover stings. An investigation into 3 Pakistani cricketers led to convictions for match fixing. Sven-Göran Eriksson was also a target, along with the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson. But he was suspended by the Sun newspaper last year after the collapse of Talisa's trial. In his stings, he was rarely seen, but Mazher Mahmood will now appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on the 30th of October. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
Now, Mazher Mahmood, one of Britain's most notorious undercover reporters, now faces jail after he was found guilty of tampering with police evidence. Mahmood, known as the fake Sheikh, faced charges linked to the collapse trial of the singer Talisa Konstavlos. As soon as the verdict was announced, 18 people who'd been caught up in Mahmood's elaborate sting operations launched civil claims, which, if successful, could total hundreds of millions of pounds. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Darshna Soni, was in court.
For 30 years, he has revelled in hiding his identity. His lucrative career depends on it. The self-styled King of the Sting, turning up to court every day beneath a balaclava. But today, the hunter became the hunted.
Miss Mahmood, what would you like to say to Why did you tamper with the evidence? Say to Talisa. Would you like to apologise for Talisa? Are you sorry? You're guilty of lying to secure a scoop. What do you say to that? Did you lie to get a front page headline? What do you say to that, Mr.
The man who once spent thousands on injunctions against those who would print his picture, with his conviction, couldn't stop his mugshot being freely published. Mazher Mahmood unmasked. Here he is. The fake Sheikh earned hundreds of thousands of pounds and claimed to expose wrongdoing. But he himself has been found guilty of doing wrong.
You'd be surprised, his career's over as well. He's finished. Probably get banged up as well. Also, I could shake a bit of the Savoy.
I think he's gone to what we might call the dark side by thinking of stories in advance of them happening and then making them happen.
For some, Mazher Mahmood's style of subterfuge represented all that was wrong at the News of the World. With that paper's collapse, the relaunch of The Sun on Sunday was meant to be a new beginning, but Mahmood's old methods have now sullied the successor. Mazher Mahmood wanted to impress his new tabloid bosses at The Sun, and so, along with his driver Alan Smith, tampered with evidence to secure a scoop. The fake sheikh apparently had an endless expense account. He'd invite his targets to some of the finest hotels in London, and here he would splash the cash, offering champagne and cocktails, and even the promise of lucrative contracts or film roles. But did his methods amount to entrapment? Over the years, there have been growing criticisms and calls for the investigator to be investigated. Mazher Mahmood was 21 when he bought his first fake sheikh outfit for £12 from an Islamic bookshop in Birmingham. With no formal training, he exposed everyone from sports stars and celebs to the royal family. He rose to become the country's most famous and controversial undercover reporter. But it was his world exclusive on an X Factor judge that would land him in the dock. In 2013, Talisa Kontostavlos was dropped from the X Factor panel after a turbulent 12 months of headlines about her private life. Her own singing career was flagging, and she was trying to make it as an actress. Mazher Mahmood saw his chance. Posing as a Bollywood filmmaker, he wined and dined her in fancy hotels, offering a leading role opposite Leonardo DiCaprio, if she could prove she was streetwise.
Almost like a bad girl.
Yeah. A bit ghetto. A bit ghetto.
Yeah. You've got, but that kind of... I mean, a kind of a...
Now I get it. Now it makes complete sense.
Talisa was charged with agreeing to supply Mahmood with cocaine, but the case dramatically collapsed when the judge accused Mahmood of lying about conspiring with his driver to change the driver's police statement.
This whole case was a horrific and disgusting entrapment by Mazher Mahmood and the Sun on Sunday newspaper.
The CPS immediately announced it was reviewing 25 previous convictions that Mahmood's stories had secured. The case raised difficult questions for the CPS and the Met Police about their enduring relationship with the reporter and his News International bosses. Mahmood often worked with them on investigations, and his paper would be allowed to film the moment of arrest, including the now discredited Victoria Beckham kidnap plot.
The police were always ready to swoop in conjunction with his scoops, and that made one inherently suspicious.
George Galloway was almost another front-page splash for the sheikh. He too was lured to a top hotel by Mahmood, who posed as a wealthy businessman.
I just smelt a very big rat. It's the difference between angling and trawling. Angling is specific, with a specific target and for a reason. Trawling is just a fishing expedition, just throwing a net into the water and dragging it along the bottom and seeing what you can entrap within it.
Not known for passing on publicity himself, Mr. Galloway's office seized the opportunity to expose Mahmood, and he used an appearance on Channel 4 News to blow the reporter's cover.
Well, here he is. This is the fake sheikh.
Ah, right.
That's him in civvies.
Mahmood's editors at News UK would only say today that they were disappointed in his conviction.
Mr. Mahmood, what would you like to say?
Why did you tell? For critics of his style of journalism, his downfall was only a matter of time. When he's sentenced in 2 weeks, the fraudulent fake could face prison.
The newspaper journalist Mazher Mahmood, known as the fake sheikh, has been jailed for 15 months for tampering with evidence during the drugs trial of the pop star Talisa Kontostavlos. A number of other celebrities who claim they were victim of Mahmood's stings and jailed as a result are now trying to have their convictions overturned. David Silito reports.
The man with his face hidden behind the hood is Mazher Mahmood, the fake sheikh, the king of the tabloid sting. He would pose as an Arab sheikh and he lured dozens of people to do or say things that made them front-page news. Many ended up in prison. Today, he was the one heading for jail. A 15-month sentence for lying, manipulating evidence, trying to get the singer Talisa convicted on a drugs charge. Outside court, one of his former victims, the actor John Alford, read out a statement.
We now know that Mazher Mahmood is a manipulator of evidence and a serial perjurer. This goes to show no one is above the law.
Behind him, others who'd been stung by the fake Sheikh.
Firstly, I would like to welcome the jury's verdict. I thank the British public and our families for their unwavering support. And I would also like to thank Alistair Morgan for his strength and inspiration in fighting injustice. In 1984, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act was put in place to protect the public from unscrupulous and corrupt police officers. But there is nothing in place to protect us, the public, from unscrupulous and corrupt journalists. This has led to a very unsavoury relationship between the two. We now know that Mazher Mahmood is a manipulator of evidence and a serial perjurer. This goes to show no one is above the law, and no one can create crimes or destroy evidence. There is a clear pattern of evidence manipulation in all of our cases. All the tapes Mazher Mahmood had sole possession of were destroyed or went missing. There are many more questions to be asked and a lot more justice to be served. It's taken over 20 years for some of us, but finally a judge and a jury of our peers has woken up to Mazher Mahmood's lies. We would now like to take this opportunity to ask Parliament to honour their promise to the British people and implement Leveson Part 2. Our three estates, the monarchy, Parliament and a judicial system, they must be held accountable, yes, but they must not be held to ransom by a corrupt or unscrupulous press. So please, let's cleanse this stain on our democracy once and for all. Thank you.
I've been amazed that it's taken so long to bring him to book. He sailed so close to the wind on so many occasions, and he seems to have really skated on thin ice and got away with it.
Basically, because of the story that went out about me, I lost my home, I lost my job. It wasn't just a job, it was a career. And a career that I think I would have done very well at, and it would have lasted quite a long time. He stole that from me.
We are drug dealers. We have paid this guy to supply the drugs to give to her.
And so the trap was laid. This secret camera footage, never broadcast before, shows us the inner workings of a Mazher Mahmood sting. Here's Steve Grayson. Billy, the man with the cocaine, is on the right. And here's Mazher Mahmood rehearsing the sting. This is the first time Emma's seen this footage.
Makes me feel sick to see them together, getting ready to set me up.
So the point is this, is the story is this page 3 girl, Emma, supplies drugs to the news of the world. What's the truth?
She wouldn't have done if Billy wasn't there.
Later, Emma was told that Billy had ended up a headless corpse. In fact, he's alive and well, and an estate agent. He told Panorama,
"I'd like to apologise to Emma for my part in stitching her up. The only real criminal was Mazher Mahmood. He gave me the money to buy the cocaine."
These people have one thing in common. Their lives were wrecked by the fake Sheikh. Stage hypnotist Jonathan Royle says he was stitched up by Mahmood when he got 6 months in prison for giving the reporter fake coins.
I can't describe what it was like from the moment that the judge said, "Send him down." Your mind plays tricks on you. It was a living nightmare. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Well, I was put on suicide watch in strange ways. I slept for weeks in prison, fully clothed, scared that what you see in films might happen. People have now started to see that what I've been saying for the past 18.5 years actually is true. The man is a liar.
Dozens of people have been jailed on the strength of Mazher Mahmood's stories. But Panorama has seen police documents which raise serious questions about why the Metropolitan Police relied upon the fake Sheikh's evidence. In 1999, a covert police investigation, part of a murder inquiry, had revealed links between corrupt police officers, a firm of private detectives called Southern Investigations, and tabloid journalists. One name that cropped up? Mazher Mahmood. One of the documents says, source met Maz. Maz was with a plainclothes officer. The officer was selling a story to Maz. We have no way of verifying that. Mazher Mahmood insists he has never bought stories from police officers. He wasn't the only journalist whose name cropped up in the paperwork. But shouldn't the police have tried to find out more? We've been told this information should have led to a full-scale inquiry.
That's how I knew I had a claim. When I brought the claim, I found to my horror that for 3.5 days, Mazher Mahmood's surveillance team had been following me in 1998 to try and pin something on me. And if anyone knows Mazher Mahmood's history, you can imagine how worrying and what a close escape that must have been for me, given that so many people who are innocent of anything that he accused them of have gone to prison on the basis of his false stories, his false evidence, and his false statements to the police, the prosecution, and to court. And I was that close. And there are plenty of other people out there who were the victims of him, who clearly had their data obtained by him through phone hacking and other unlawful means.
They had a very, very, very cosy relationship with the press because they can use lies, trickery and deceit to get a story, which they call subterfuge. Very convenient for them, very damning for us.
Their solicitor is calling for an inquiry, and she's damning about the conduct of the Metropolitan Police.
Corrupt.
Corrupt.
Absolute corruption.
Corrupt is a heavy word.
It is, and what was going on was very heavy and very serious, but we have evidence of that. I hope finally people will listen to what these men have been saying all along, and I would stress this, there isn't one of those convictions that Mahmood sustained has not been tainted by his behaviour. Not one.
The reporter's victims plan to sue News UK in the civil courts. Today, the company said they would fight those cases and that Mahmood had led scores of successful investigations during his 25-year career with the company, which had led to the exposure of criminality and wrongdoing.
For the likes of us and the other people that he stung, I certainly don't feel justice has been done, do you?
Not really.
No.
No.
No. And as far as not wishing it on my worst enemy, I'm more than happy that Mazher Mahmood is now sat there, quaking in his boots, wondering what's going to happen to him in jail. I'd like to be a fly on the wall.
The question now is, why did the authorities let these people suffer for so long?
So there you have it. It's May 2022. I've just put my reapplication into the Criminal Cases Review Commission. And I'm still fighting not just for me, but for all of Mahmood's victims and other victims of media lies, dishonesty and illegal techniques. Check out the updated evidence. It gets updated regularly at circusofthemind.net. Circusofthemind.net. Or my main website is magicalguru.com.